So let's compare what the MAGA Republican fascists are saying about Ukraine to the former commanding general of the United States Army Europe, Ben Hodges. First, the fascists, who would let Putin conquer Europe and have your kids speaking Russian.
I would far rather go to war over the monarch butterfly than deciphering what guy in a tracksuit gets to run Crimea oceans away. The case for America's interest is far more clear with the butterfly.
I know that you all think that Ukraine, some country, a country next to another country called Russia, is the most important thing you should care about. But we have a new global pandemic. Have you heard about this? Monkeypox, that's right. It's the newest thing. It's the newest thing. Listen, you guys have to update your social media right next to your Ukraine flag and your mask emoji and your vaccine shot emoji. You need to make sure you have a monkey emoji, okay?
Had they been or are they to become part of NATO, that means U.S. soldiers will be fighting in Ukraine, and that's something I very much oppose.
Senator, could I just say to that, because look, these are important conversations and arguments. My judgment is different. If you look at the countries that Russia has attacked over the last years, Georgia, leaving forces in Transnistria and Moldova, and then repeatedly Ukraine, these were countries that were not part of NATO. It has not attacked NATO countries for probably a very good reason.
You could also argue the countries they've attacked were part of Russia.
Well,
we're part of the Soviet Union.
Yes, and I firmly disagree with that proposition. It is the fundamental right of these countries to decide their own future and their own destiny. And
I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying that the countries that have been attacked, Georgia and Ukraine, were part of the Soviet Union.
And that does not give
they were
Russia
part
the
of
right
the
to attack
Soviet
them.
Union since the 1920s.
But that does not give Russia the right to attack them. On the contrary,
no one's saying it does, but it
they were
really has
liberated
nothing to do
from being part of this empire by force.
Now let's hear from Ben Hodges, the former commanding general of the United States Army Europe, and get a real update on Ukraine. Ben, take it away.
Hey, what's up, Midas Mighty? I'm Ben Hodges, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General. I served in the Army for 38 years, and in the last 3 years, I was commander of U.S. Army Europe, and we worked with our Ukrainian partners throughout those 3 years after Russia's invasion of Crimea in 2014. I'm not surprised at all by how well the Ukrainians are fighting. Based on what my soldiers and I saw them as we helped them train after the initial invasion in 2014. I'm a realistic optimist or an optimistic realist, depending on how you want to couch it. But I think by the end of this year, there's a good chance that Ukraine will have pushed Russian forces back to the 23 February line if we in the West do everything we said we're going to do and deliver everything we said we're going to deliver. So a couple of big updates I'd want to share with you. First of all, I believe that Russian logistical system is on the verge of collapse. What they're having to do now is not what they're organized to do, trained to do, or prepared to do. The fact that they had to transition to a war of attrition, relying strictly on artillery with conventional ammunition and rockets against towns and villages and killing civilians, the logistical system required to do that is massive, and they don't have it. And now the fact that the HIMARS have been so effective at destroying Russian ammunition points, the Russians are having to pull those further back, which means now you have more requirement for trucks to carry the ammunition forward to the guns. So this makes the logistical challenge for them even worse. So that's I think it's something that you don't hear about often because there's so much focus on little red arrows on maps and what happened in the individual towns, but that's not particularly relevant to the larger situation. What really matters is the test of logistics. And so that would be my first sort of takeaway, is that Ukraine is actually winning the test of logistics. Theirs gets better, a little bit better each week. Russia's gets a little worse each week. So what's been causing the most damage for Russian forces against Ukrainian forces, of course, is this endless amount of rocket and artillery bombardment. And the Russians seem to have almost endless amounts of conventional ammunition. So for the Ukrainians to be able to stop this, to turn the tide, they needed the capability to hit Russian artillery, Russian rockets, Russian ammunition storage sites, and Russian headquarters. They couldn't do it with what they had. But now, finally, the arrival in numbers of Western provided long-range artillery and especially long-range rocket launchers. HIMARS is the one that has been the most visible and, frankly, the most effective. This is a truck-mounted rocket system. It has a six-pack on the back, if you will, and it can fire a variety of munitions, rockets. The munitions that we have provided, that the United States has provided, have a range out to about 40 miles. That's at least twice the range of anything that Ukraine's been able to do so far. The other thing about this rocket launcher is the precision. It's GPS. So, I mean, literally, it can drop on a dime, whatever the grid is that's put in as the target. And you don't need 100 rounds to do it, or a whole battery of artillery when you can put one rocket on top of a Russian storage site. So it's the range and the accuracy. The third thing that makes it such a valuable weapon is that it can move. I mean, it's truck mounted. So it fires 1, 2, 3 rockets, and then it moves to a new location before the Russians can find it or launch a counterfire mission. The only problem with HIMARS is that there's not enough. The U.S. has provided a very small number. I think we're up to 8 launchers provided by the U.S., so 8 trucks. And I think the U.K. is about to provide another 4. So this is probably about a quarter to a fifth of the quantity that's needed of those rocket launchers. I think the next step is the Ukrainian General Staff is looking for an opportunity for a significant counterstrike. It looks to me that Kherson, the region in the south of Ukraine, is vulnerable. You've got a fairly significant resistance effort there. The terrain actually gives Ukraine some advantages, or at least in terms of limiting Russia's ability to continue attacking further west. So I think that the General Staff is considering some way to break the Russian hold on Kherson, especially before the Russians can complete their annexation and their efforts to get rid of all Ukrainian state apparatus, Ukrainian officials, and so on. This is an area where I think, and I hope, that they will focus a counterstrike. Now, I think given the number of Russian soldiers who have been killed, over 20,000, if you listen to British intelligence, the Ukrainians claim significantly more than that. But I think for our purposes of analysis, I go with the British numbers, really provided by Bellingcat. 20,000 is a huge number of soldiers to have been killed inside 5 months. And then you assume at least twice that many have been wounded somehow. The Russians have recruited primarily from outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg. So you don't have funerals every week in Moscow or St. Petersburg for fallen soldiers. They're out in the other sort of ethnic areas, which is a traditional way that the Russians have recruited, so that their minorities are bearing the brunt of the fighting. But you can't conceal that forever. And I think as this attrition goes along, and as the Russians are required to recruit more and more people out of prisons and send soldiers into a fight that are not properly trained, that's going to be impossible to conceal. The other thing that I think is going to come to the fore here over the next couple of months is that the average Russian is going to begin to feel the effects of sanctions more than they have so far. I mean, the only thing we've heard about is, some difficulties, them using PayPal or the closure of the McDonald's in Moscow. But as sanctions begin to take effect on industrial production out in the towns where maybe 1 or 2 factories are the principal business for this city, as those close down, more and more Russians are going to feel the effects. I don't believe that Putin's support in the inner circles, I don't believe it's monolithic. I don't think it's guaranteed. I don't think that whoever might replace him would be better, but I don't think his support is a given. The cohesion of Western leaders in support of Ukraine is going to be the decisive part of how this war turns out. I believe that the Kremlin assumes that the United States, Germany, UK, France, Italy, others will lose interest either because of our own problems or our own midterm elections, for example, in the US, or gas or energy supplies putting a serious amount of damage on the German economy, for example, or the change of leadership in UK. I think the Kremlin's assuming that that's all going to happen and that we're going to lose interest and not be able to continue supporting Ukraine. And so then they just got to sort of hang in there till the end of the year. And so the president has done a remarkable job keeping everybody focused on why this is important. You know, three of our most important American leaders in our history led the country through the darkest times. George Washington during the Revolution, Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War, and then FDR during the Depression and the beginning of World War II. And all three of them were successful because they were able to explain to Americans why this matters, why it's so important that we do this, why the price that we're going to have to pay is worth the outcome. And so I think President Biden and the rest of the administration, but also congressional leaders, they're doing that so far, but they're going to have to do it. It's going to become more and more of a challenge. Look, I'm an optimistic realist. I believe Ukraine wins. War is a test of will, and it's a test of logistics. Ukrainian logistics are getting better. Russian logistics are getting worse. Ukrainian soldiers and people have obviously far superior will to the Russian soldiers who don't want to be there. The real test of will is going to be between the Kremlin and the leaders of the West. That's why I am optimistic that Ukraine will be successful. I'd also like to add one last thing. I have just joined Human Rights First as a senior advisor. I was attracted to Human Rights First because of the emphasis on defending democracy, both external and internal. So what Russia is trying to do to Ukraine is an attack by an autocratic leader against a struggling young democracy. That's why this is so important. And of course, we've got to defend democracy at home as well, just as important if we're going to defend democracy abroad.
Thanks, Ben. Look, the choice couldn't be clearer. It's fascist losers versus pro-democracy heroes. Which side are you on? Hey, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to subscribe right now to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. Become a member of the Meidas Mighty and join the MeidasTouch movement, the fastest growing independent media company in the world. Thank you.